The microphone whined when my brother yanked it off the stand. 400 people in black tie froze where they stood. Hudson's smile was the same one I had grown up watching, the slow, careful smile that always meant someone was about to bleed. He pointed across the marble floor to where I was standing alone near the lobby pillar. He said my name like it was a sentence being read out loud. He said the Wayne Foundation had uncovered a thief, and that thief was right there in the borrowed gown, pretending she still belonged to this family. He said my name a second time to make sure no one missed it. He said Selene Wayne had been quietly draining a charity that fed children in flood zones. The room pulled in a single breath I felt inside my ribs. Carmen, my brother's wife, pressed a tissue to her eye like she was already mourning a scandal she had personally manufactured. My father stared at the floor. My mother stared at her hands. The event host stood frozen at the podium, unsure if she should clap or signal security. I did not move. I did not speak. I let the silence stretch because I already knew exactly who was about to walk through those doors. My name is Selene Wayne. I am 31 years old, a forensic accountant who spent the last 18 months helping the federal government build a case my brother did not know existed. Before I tell you what happened next, do me a favor and hit that like button, then tap subscribe so the algorithm can carry this story to the people who need it. Drop your city and your local time in the comments. I love seeing how far one quiet woman's revenge can travel in one night. Alright, back to the story. Most of my life, I was the second child no one noticed. Hudson was the heir. The smile, the speechmaker, the boy who could walk into any room and convince the floor it had been waiting for him. I was the one with the calculator, the one who corrected the math on his school projects so he would not embarrass himself, the one who caught a tax discrepancy in the family business at age 16 and got told to mind my business. That last sentence became my whole personality for a while. I did mind my business. I just learned to keep careful records of everyone else's. In our house, Hudson was the sun, and the rest of us were furniture arranged to catch his light. My father, Ronan Wayne, ran the family hospitality group with the kind of pride that needed an audience. My mother, Vivian, ran the appearances. She made sure the Christmas card photos showed a perfect family, even when the inside of our house was 3 different Cold Wars happening at once. Hudson was 4 years older than me and treated like a small king. He broke a window with a baseball at 9, and my father framed the bat. I scored a top reading mark in the state at 12, and my mother told me not to mention it at the country club because it might make Hudson feel small. I learned early that being capable in this family was a kind of crime. The family had no language for a daughter who was sharper than the sun, so I went quiet. I read books in corners. I built a small, private world inside my own head that nobody could enter without an invitation. That world is where I learned to count things. People, lies, bank entries, all of it. And eventually, the counting became a career nobody in my family ever bothered to take seriously. I went to college 1,000 miles from home. I picked accounting because the numbers did not lie even when the people around them did. By my second year, I had picked up a minor in criminology because forensic accounting was a small specialty back then. And I wanted to be the person companies called when they suspected someone was stealing from them. My first real job was at a firm in Chicago that handled fraud investigations for nonprofits. I was good at it. Good in a way that surprised the partners. They moved me to the bigger cases inside 3 months. I learned to read a charity's books the way other people read a face, looking for the small twitches that told you someone was hiding something. 6 years in, I left to start my own practice. 2 assistants, 1 office on the 7th floor of a quiet building, a steady stream of clients who needed answers their boards did not want them to have. My family treated all of this like a hobby. My father once introduced me at a holiday gathering as the daughter who plays with calculators. I stopped attending those gatherings. I did not stop watching them. 5 years ago, my mother asked me to help her find a missing donation receipt for her own taxes. The donation had gone to the Wayne Family Foundation, which had been launched 2 years earlier with a glossy press release about clean water and climate resilience. I pulled the Foundation's public 990 filings to track the receipt. The numbers stopped me cold. The Foundation had reported $4 million in program expenses in a single year, but the actual project list could not have cost more than a few $100,000. The grant recipients were all entities I could not find in any state registry. The board was 3 names. All of them are people who worked for my father in other capacities. I stared at that filing for a very long time. Then I closed the laptop and made my mother a cup of tea and told her I would find her receipt the next day. I did not tell her what I had seen, not because I was protecting her, but because I did not yet know which side of it she would land on. I went home that night and started a private folder on an encrypted drive. I named it Charity Number 2. That folder eventually became the case. A year after that night, I was still quietly pulling threads. I had built a small map of the Foundation's transactions just to see where the lines went. They went to 4 shell companies, registered in 3 different states, all of which routed back to a holding company my brother technically owned, but my father controlled. I was being careful. I was not asking questions out loud. But somebody at the company noticed I had requested archived board minutes from the legal department. 3 days later, my father called me into his office at the corporate headquarters and told me my consulting contract with the family business was being terminated. He used the phrase strategic realignment. Hudson sat in the corner pretending to read something important on his phone with a small private smile that told me exactly who had flagged the request. I packed my laptop into my bag, signed the exit paperwork, and walked out of the building without a single argument. In the elevator, a security guard who had known me since I was a teenager looked at the box in my hands and said, "You sure you don't want me to call you a cab?" I told him no, thank you. I preferred to walk. I was already counting steps. My closest friend in the world was a woman named Sonia Cole. We had met in a mandatory ethics seminar during graduate school and bonded over a shared horror at how often the speaker said the word integrity without defining it. Sonia had become a federal prosecutor, specializing in financial crimes. She lived in a small apartment full of plants and case files, and the occasional rescue cat. She was the one person on earth I trusted to hold something heavy without getting curious about its shape. The night I came home from being walked out of the family company, I drove straight to Sonia's apartment. I sat at her kitchen counter and told her everything I had found. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked me one question. "Do you want to keep this in a folder, or do you want to actually do something about it?" I thought about my father's office, the family photos on the wall, the small framed press clipping about the Foundation's launch hanging behind his desk. I thought about every child the Foundation claimed to be feeding. I told Sonia I wanted to do something about it. She nodded and said, "Then we start tomorrow." 3 months after I was pushed out, Hudson got married. The wife was Carmen Vance, an event planner from a wealthy family who treated weddings the way generals treat battlefields. She had a smile that arrived a half second before her eyes did, which always told me everything I needed to know. At the wedding reception, Carmen pulled me aside in a hallway lit by gold sconces and complimented my dress in a way that made it sound like a question. Then she leaned in close and said, in the warmest voice imaginable, that she hoped I understood Hudson would be running things now, and that the family did not need any extra noise from people who had already chosen their own path. I smiled back and told her I did not make noise. I made notes. She laughed, like I had told a joke. We never spoke again at length until the night she stood beside Hudson and watched him try to destroy me in front of 400 people. From that wedding forward, Carmen became the engine of the family narrative about me. She was the one who told their friends I was bitter. She was the one who used the word jealous. I let her keep talking. 18 months before the gala, Sonia introduced me to a woman named Agent Devon Castle from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. We met in the back booth of a sandwich shop with no windows. The kind of place law enforcement people pick when they want to make sure no camera is watching. Devon was in her 40s, calm in the way of people who have seen more than they will ever talk about. She listened to my summary for nearly an hour without writing a single thing down. When I finished, she asked me one question. Are you prepared for what this will cost you personally? I sat with that question for almost a minute. I thought about my mother. I thought about my father's pride. I thought about the family name printed on the side of 2 hotel chains. I thought about the foundation's website, which had a photo of a small girl drinking from a cup that I now suspected had been pulled from a stock image library. I told Devon yes. She slid a folder across the table. The forms inside made me a confidential source. I signed them with a steady hand. Then I ate half a sandwich I could not taste and drove home to start the longest 18 months of my life. For the next year and a half, my life had 2 shapes. The public shape was the daughter who had been gently exiled from the family business and was running a small forensic accounting firm in a quiet building. The private shape was a confidential informant feeding documents, transcripts, and pattern analysis to a federal task force that was slowly mapping the entire architecture of the Wayne Foundation. I learned how to back up evidence 3 different ways. I learned how to wipe metadata from screenshots. I learned how to attend a holiday gathering and smile at my brother across a room while a federal agent in another city was reading a memo with his bank statements attached. The hardest part was not the surveillance. The hardest part was the small moments of normal. My mother calling to ask about my apartment plant. My father sending a polite birthday text. Hudson posting photos of a new motorcycle on his story. Each of those moments lived in a different universe from the folder Devon and I were building, and I had to live in both universes at the same time, without letting the seal between them crack. Some nights I felt like 2 different people sitting in the same body, taking turns answering the phone. 11 months into the investigation, an opportunity surfaced that I almost did not believe. The Wayne Foundation had been hosting its annual gala for years at a historic event venue called the Halloran Atrium downtown. The owners of the Halloran were an older couple ready to retire, and the building was quietly listed for sale through a private broker. My father had been talking about buying it himself for years, calling it a future legacy property. I beat him to it. I bought the Halloran through an LLC named after a small lake my mother used to take me to as a child. The name meant nothing to my father. The lake was something only she and I had shared, and she had stopped visiting it years ago. The purchase closed on a Tuesday afternoon. The existing rental contracts, including the foundation's annual gala lease, transferred cleanly to my LLC. My family did not know. The gala continued as scheduled because the building manager I retained had no reason to mention an ownership change to a tenant. I quietly became my brother's landlord, 6 months before he stood on my marble floor and called me a thief in front of 400 people. I did not even smile when I signed the deed. Carmen and I crossed paths exactly once in those 18 months, at a coffee shop near my office. She walked in with 2 of her friends from the country club crowd, saw me sitting alone with a laptop, and decided to perform. She came over with a sympathetic head tilt and said it was so nice to see me getting out of the house. She introduced me to her friends as Hudson's sister, the one who took some time off from the family business to find herself. One of her friends laughed politely. The other one looked at the floor because she could feel the cruelty in the room even if she could not name it. Carmen leaned down and asked me, in a stage whisper loud enough for the next 2 tables to hear, if I was doing okay financially, or if there was anything the family could do. I closed my laptop slowly and looked up at her. I told her I was doing very well, thank you. I told her my work was steady and my bills were paid and that I appreciated her concern. Then I asked her if she wanted to sit down because I had a few questions about the foundation's water project budget. She left within 90 seconds. After the coffee shop, Carmen got serious. The Family Whisper Network had always been a quiet thing, but now it acquired direction and momentum. Friends I had not heard from in months started sending careful messages asking if everything was all right. A cousin called to ask why I had been pulling money out of the foundation, which was the first I had heard of any such accusation. A board member of a charity I had once volunteered for asked me to step back from an upcoming fundraiser because, in her words, there was just some chatter to be careful around. I tracked the chatter back through 3 different sources, and every line led to Carmen's phone. She was not subtle. She was using the word embezzlement at brunches. She was using the word pathological at salon appointments. She was building a public narrative that I was the family's secret black sheep with a hand in the cookie jar. And she was doing it just slowly enough that I could not legally call it defamation without making myself look paranoid. I documented everything. I did not respond to any of it. I let her run because every step she took was tightening a noose she could not see. 2 weeks before the gala, my mother called me. She had not called in months. Her voice on the phone had that careful surface she used when she was about to do my father's bidding while pretending it was her own. She told me she had heard some troubling things and wanted to give me a chance to explain. She said she did not want to believe what people were saying, but the consistency of the rumors was concerning. She used the phrase, smoke and fire. She asked me if I had taken anything from the foundation. I sat with the phone against my ear and felt 31 years of being the family's quiet daughter stack up inside my chest. I asked her one question. I asked her if, in her entire life, she had ever known me to take anything that was not mine. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Selene, sometimes people change. I told her I had to go. I hung up before she could pretend she had not just chosen a side. Then I sat on my kitchen floor for a while and cried in the silent, careful way I had learned to cry as a child, because some part of me had still hoped she would surprise me. She did not. The day of the gala arrived with no warning. I woke up at 6 and made coffee in the dark. I took my coffee to the window and watched the city wake up the way I always did before something important. Devin called at 8 to confirm everything was in position. 2 agents would be inside the building in suits posing as guests. A team would be staged in a coordination van 2 blocks away. The arrest warrants had been signed by a federal judge 3 days earlier. The plan was simple. Allow my brother and father to begin their public remarks, allow the foundation to be publicly celebrated one last time, and then move when the moment was right. Devin told me I did not have to be there. I told her I knew. She paused on the line and then said, in a softer voice than her usual one, "See you tonight. I picked out a dress that morning the way you pick out armor. Black, sharp shoulders, a high neck, no jewelry. I did my own hair." I looked at myself in the mirror for a long moment before I left, and I told the woman in the glass exactly one thing. "Tonight, you do not flinch." She did not flinch. The Holleran atrium glowed when I pulled up to the curb. Floor-to-ceiling windows lit from inside, white marble steps, a doorman in a fitted coat who recognized me immediately and gave me a small, respectful nod that nobody else in the building would have understood. I had been by the property weekly for months, walking through the spaces, talking to the staff, checking the maintenance reports. I knew which lights flickered. I knew where the back exits were. I knew the name of every server who would be working that night because I had personally approved the staffing list. The foundation's event coordinator had no idea the woman she had been emailing for weeks was the same woman about to be publicly accused on her own marble floor. I climbed the steps, handed my coat to the attendant, and walked into the atrium under the soft amber lighting that I had personally selected during the building renovations. People looked up. Some smiled at me out of habit, the kind of smile you give a familiar face you cannot quite place. Others looked away quickly because Carmen's whisper campaign had done its job. I let both reactions land. I walked toward the bar and ordered a sparkling water. The room was full of the particular kind of wealth that takes itself very seriously. Politicians who needed photos taken with charity work in the background. Hospitality executives who had done business with my father for decades. A handful of journalists from the lifestyle section of the city paper. Carmen floated through the crowd in a pale green gown, accepting compliments and lightly squeezing forearms. Hudson stood near the stage in a tailored suit, practicing the face he wore for important moments. My father held court near the side wall with 3 older men I recognized as foundation board members. My mother was close to him, smiling on cue. At 8:30, the event host took the stage and welcomed the room. She introduced Hudson as the visionary chair of the Wayne Foundation. He climbed the steps to applause. He talked for 10 minutes about clean water and climate resilience and the Foundation's commitment to children in flood zones. He used the phrase generational responsibility. He thanked our father. He thanked Carmen. He did not mention me. That was expected. What was not expected, at least to anyone in the room except me and the two agents in the corner, was what he did next. He paused. He smiled. He reached for the microphone. He pulled the microphone off the stand. He stepped down from the stage. Cameras turned with him. He said he had something difficult to share with the room. Something a family would normally keep private, but that the Foundation deserved transparency above all else. He said his sister, who had quietly returned to society in recent months after a difficult period, had been discovered to have made a series of unauthorized withdrawals from Foundation accounts. He said the family had been heartbroken. He said the Foundation board, after careful review, had decided to make the matter public because secrecy would only damage the cause. He pointed across the marble floor to where I stood near the bar with a sparkling water in my hand. 400 faces turned toward me at the same time. I felt the heat of the room shift onto my skin. Hudson's voice carried through the speakers. "Selene Wayne, you should have stayed away." The phones came up. People started recording. This was the moment Carmen had been building toward for 18 months. This was the public ruin she had stitched together, one whisper at a time. I stood very still and let him keep talking, because every word he said was about to become evidence. When Hudson finally stopped, the room was so quiet I could hear the air system pushing through the vents. Carmen stood beside the stage with one hand pressed against her chest, her face carefully arranged into the expression of a woman bravely supporting a family in pain. My father stood with his arms crossed. My mother looked at her shoes. The event host did not know what to do. I set my sparkling water on the bar. I walked toward the center of the room slowly. I did not rush. The cameras tracked me the whole way. When I reached the foot of the stage, I held out my hand for the microphone. Hudson hesitated. He had not planned for me to ask for the microphone. The host, looking for any way to diffuse the moment, walked to the stage and gestured to the second mic on the stand. I climbed the steps in heels that had been chosen specifically for steadiness. I tapped the microphone once. The sound carried. I looked out at the 400 faces. I said, "Good evening. Thank you all for coming. I would like to respond to my brother's announcement, and I would like to do it with documents." The room exhaled. I reached into the small clutch I had been carrying all night. I pulled out a single folded page. I held it up so the cameras could see it. I told the room that the page in my hand was a redacted summary of an 18-month federal investigation into the Wayne Foundation, conducted by the IRS Criminal Investigation Division and the Office of the United States Attorney. I told them I had been the cooperating witness. I told them the Foundation's clean water grants had funneled through 4 shell companies into private accounts held jointly by my brother Hudson Wayne and his wife Carmen Vance Wayne, with knowledge and direction from my father Ronan Wayne. I told them the actual amount unaccounted for was $19.4 million across 6 fiscal years. I told them the children in the photographs on the Foundation website did not exist. The room did not move. Carmen's hand fell from her chest. Hudson's mouth opened and then closed and then opened again. My father took one step forward and then stopped because he had finally noticed the 2 men in dark suits walking toward the stage from the side entrance. I lowered the microphone slightly. I said, "On cue. The rest of this is not my speech to give." Agent Devin Castle stepped onto the stage in a navy blazer and a calm that made the room go quieter than I had thought a room could go. She introduced herself by name and badge number. She produced the warrants. She read them aloud at a measured pace, naming Hudson Wayne first, then Carmen Vance Wayne, then Ronan Wayne. She listed the charges: wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, false statements to federal authorities. The room watched her like she was reading them their own future. The 2 agents from the corner moved forward with practiced ease and approached my brother. Hudson looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not anger. Not even shock. Confusion, like a man who had spent his entire life being told he was the smartest person in every room and had only just discovered that he had never been the smartest person in any room. Carmen made a small sound and turned toward the lobby. One of the agents intercepted her without rushing, the way you stop a child from walking into traffic. My father did not move at all. He was staring at the marble floor of the building he had never finished trying to buy. Carmen's heel caught on the edge of a floor seam as she tried to step around the agent. She stumbled. The agent caught her elbow politely. She pulled her arm back and started to say something about her lawyer, about her father, about a misunderstanding. The agent listened patiently and then simply told her, "Ma'am, you can call anyone you like from the car." Her face did something complicated then. The performance she had spent years building, the practiced grace, the country club composure, it all slipped at once, like a mask whose strings had been cut. She looked at Hudson. Hudson did not look back. She looked at me. I held her eyes for one steady beat. Then I looked away because I had used up my generosity for her at the coffee shop a year ago. The agents walked Hudson and Carmen toward the side exit. The cameras followed. Phones recorded. By morning, the videos would be on every social media platform that mattered, and the hashtag would already be writing itself. My father stood frozen by the wall. The third agent approached him, said his name, and offered him the dignity of walking out under his own power. He took it. He did not look at my mother. She did not look at him. The room emptied slowly. The journalist stayed the longest, asking the host questions she could not answer. The board members had vanished within seconds, which was its own kind of confession. My mother stood near the wall where my father had been, her hands folded in front of her. Her face the same careful mask she had worn at every Christmas card photo of my entire life. She looked at me across the room. I looked back. We did not move toward each other. There was nothing to say in that moment that would not have made one of us a liar. She picked up her clutch. She walked out. I watched her go. I did not feel the satisfaction I had imagined. What I felt was something quieter and harder to name. The end of an old hope. The hope that one day she would surprise me. That one day she would walk into a room where my father was wrong and choose me instead of him. That hope had been a small, expensive engine running in the background of my life for 31 years, and I felt it switch off as the door closed behind her. The atrium was almost empty. The lights I had selected myself glowed steadily on the marble I owned. 90 days later, the case was the biggest financial fraud story in the state. Hudson and Carmen had taken plea deals that involved cooperation, restitution, and federal time. My father had not taken a plea. His legal team was preparing for trial. The Wayne Foundation had been formally dissolved. A court-appointed receiver was managing the recovery and redistribution of assets to legitimate charities working in the regions the foundation had pretended to serve. The hotel group's board, scrambling to protect what was left of the brand, had voted unanimously to invite me onto the board as an independent director. I had said no. I had my own firm to run. I had my own life to live. My mother had moved into a smaller condo across town. She had sent me one letter. 3 pages, handwritten. It was the closest thing to an honest accounting I had ever received from her. I had read it once. I had not yet decided whether to write back. The Halloran Atrium continued to operate as one of the most booked event venues in the city. I had personally approved the renaming of the main hall after a local children's literacy charity. The first event in the renamed hall was the literacy charity's annual fundraiser. I learned a few things I did not know I needed to learn. I learned that the worst betrayals do not arrive in shouts. They arrive in whispers, dressed in concern, served by people you love. I learned that public humiliation can be a gift if you have spent the last 18 months quietly stacking the truth in a folder no one knew existed. I learned that being underestimated is not a wound. It is a privilege. People do not guard themselves around the daughter who plays with calculators. They tell her things. They sign things in front of her. They forget she is in the room. And one day she stops being in the room and starts being in the courtroom. And by then, it is far too late. If this story struck a chord deep inside you, pour your thoughts into the comments below. And if you've ever had to rebuild your life from the ashes, or you are still quietly rebuilding it piece by piece, you are exactly where you belong. Hit subscribe, leave a like, and stay close for the next story. My name is Selene Wayne. I am 31 years old. I no longer flinch, and I never plan to again.